Whistle Down the Wind, Side 4. He'd found his boots and socks by now and sat on the straw again, pulling them on. "I hope this doesn't mean you're thinking of pushing on," I said. "There's a time for everything, Brett, and the time of my departure is mighty close at hand." "What a swizz," I said. "Oh, what about the police and all that?" asked Cricky. "Oh, I'm not really worried about a few chaps in uniform," he said. He pulled the shoelace so hard it broke. "Blast," he said. "You can have my hair ribbon," I told him. "It's pretty ropey, but it'll do." He seemed quite pleased with it, and, well, really, I must say, I felt madly proud to think of my hair ribbon doing up Jesus' shoe. "Thank you, Brat," he said softly. "Anyone got a handkerchief or a bit of rag to spare?" "Not to cry on?" I asked nervously. "No, just to tie round the old neck. It's a bit nippy out there." "Especially after a 101 temperature," said Swallow, and she took her cardigan off and tied it round his neck. "Oh, no, Swallow, honey," he said. "I don't want to take your jersey." "I'd be proud," she said. She was nearly in tears, she was really. "Here," said poor baby. "You've got Brat's ribbon on your boot and Swallow's cardigan on your neck. What can I give you?" "You've all given me plenty," he said, and stooped down and picked up Betty Davis and kissed her. "Goodbye, old sweat," he said to her. "You kept me nice and warm, you did." He seemed to be ready to go after that, and stood there looking at us all. It was at this point that poor baby gave him his knife. It's a cowboy knife on a huge long string, and he's pretty proud of it. "Take this," he said. "You might need it to cut someone's throat with." The man laughed like a drain. He did really. "I give up," he said. "I just give up. You kill me, the lot of you." But he took the knife. I suppose he didn't want to hurt poor baby's feelings. "Oh, don't go," begged Swallow. "Please don't go, not yet. Wait and see. They'll catch the right convict, then they'll leave you alone." "The right one?" he asked. "I thought we'd all agreed it was to be me." "Goodness, no. We all know who you are," said Elizabeth. "Well, nothing will make us think different, so you don't have to worry about us. We believe. It's these grown-ups you've got to sort out." "I see," he said thoughtfully. Then he sat down again. "Look here, sir. You're safer up here than anywhere," said Mark. He looked up at Mark. He's pretty tall and his head was in the dark. "It's all written, you know, boy," he said. "I think it's just ghastly," said poor baby, "that you have to keep on coming back and getting got. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't really." "Isn't there any end to it?" I asked him. "There isn't any end to anything," he replied. "But as long as you don't mind too much, I suppose it doesn't matter either." "You're just used to it, aren't you?" asked Cricky. "Mum says you get used to anything after a while." "That's the way to look at it, chum," he said. "But you'll have a different reception when we're grown-ups, you'll see," I said. "Will I?" he asked, and stroked my face. "If I had a wish," said Swallow, "I'd wish you could suddenly be caught up right in front of us. Then we'd know you were going to be all right." "If I had a wish," said poor baby, "I'd wish Brat's bosoms would grow so I could have my own bathroom." "If I had a wish," the man said, "I'd ask for a cig. Oh, just a couple of puffs." "Good Lord, why didn't you say so before?" poor baby answered him. "I've got half a tin of papers and baccy." He struggled in his jeans and brought out this half-mangled tin, which he gave to Jesus. He looked delighted, pleased as punch. Poor baby watched him rolling one. Then the man offered him the tin back. "Oh, keep it," said poor baby. "I'm giving it up for Lent anyway." He seemed to be enjoying his puffs, but on the whole you could say he looked pretty fed up. I got the feeling he wanted to say something, or maybe he just wasn't sure whether he wanted to go or stay. Nobody said much for a time. We just sat there in this almost dark, sniffing the smoke from his cig. "You know what I think?" he said suddenly. We said we didn't. "I think you should all vamoose." We must have looked a bit blank. Our French is pretty bad. I think you should all disperse. Go now." "Do you want to be alone to pray?" Elizabeth asked. He looked madly solemn. "Yes," he said. "And after you've said your prayers," I asked him, "will you just wait to get took, or will you make a dash for it?" "Oh, what do you suggest?" he asked. "A dash every time," I replied. "Or is it against the rules?" "Perhaps I'll have to let myself get took," he said, sort of sadly. "On it goes," said poor baby. "The same old story all over again. Gets me down, it does really." "It doesn't have to happen that way," said Mark suddenly. "We could change it if we wanted to, because we know. The others last time weren't in on it, as you might say." "Oh, last time you never had a chance," Swallow said excitedly. "Well, this time we could hold 'em up, hold the lousy soldiers up and give you a chance." "They'll get him in the end," said Susan. "They always get everyone in the end." "You're right, kid," he said. We could see the end of his cig burning like a great red eye. Just at that moment we heard this bugle of Father's. "Corks," said poor baby. "That's a summons, that is." "It can't be bath time," Swallow said, and fiddled about with this clock of hers that's luminous. "It's only 6:15. "We'd better go and see what it's all about," I said. "What will you other characters do?" "We'll go round everyone up," said Jeremy. "Give them orders in case of disaster." "Good show," said poor baby, and started for the ladder. "I may not see you again," said the man, and put his hand out. We all stopped. "Why not?" I asked. "We'll be right back." "All the same, better say goodbye to be on the safe side," he went on. "Are you going to leave us after all?" Swallow asked. "Somehow," he began, and then stopped. We waited. "Well, somehow, I don't think I'll ever leave you." "Oh, don't go," poor baby begged. "After all the trouble we've had with the badges." "Well, they could go on being for the unrightful slaughter of horses," he said. "That's what the grown-ups will think," said Cricky, "but we all know different." "Well, keep them," I told him, "and next time you come you'll know us by our badges, won't you?" "Oh, I'll have lost mine," said poor baby. "Can't help it, but I'll lose everything." "You could put it in your cash box," said Swallow. We could hear this bugle blaring. He shook hands with us one by one as we went down the ladder. I stuck Betty Davis in my pocket. She was livid. At the bottom we stopped and looked up. It seemed ghastly to think we might not see him again. He was awfully nice. He was, really. Outside the Oast we all parted. "You go and see what's up," said Jeremy. "Leave the rest to us. Mark and me and Andrew, we've got bicycles." And they all hared away into the darkness. It was just as we were getting to the rhododendron bush that we suddenly saw him. Amos Nodge. "He's been listening," I gasped. "Judas!" shrieked poor baby, and flung a lump of cowpat at him. The little beast ran for his life, but we knew now everything was desperate, but desperate. In the sitting room were these two corny-looking policemen without their hats on. Father was there too. "Sergeant Porkers wants to ask you kids a few questions," he said. Porkers, I thought. Hope you won't like your name, Sans, rooting about all over the joint. "Yes," said Swallow, very confident. "We wanted to ask you if you'd seen any strange men about," said this Porkers. "No," we said, "only you two." They smiled grimly. "Are you sure?" he went on. The other one had a notebook and pencil all poised and ready. "No one at all," we said like a chorus of boys in church. "It's my duty to warn you that there is a dangerous convict at a loose end," he said, very serious. "More than a convict, he is mentally unbalanced. And if he came across kids in a dark lane, it might be the worse for them." "Really? What would he do?" I asked. "He might do anything. He might try to—" Father cut in here. "Sarge, I don't think we want to frighten—" "No, sir, no, of course not. But I do think these kids should have a good idea of their danger, you know." "You mean he's a murderer at large?" I asked. "A murderer of kids?" "Now, don't be scared," he said. "I'm not scared, not one bit," I assured him. "I'd like to see a murderer at large. I've only seen one on the television." "Hope to God you never do," said Father fervently, like he was saying the Lord's Prayer.
"Now we know he's somewhere round here. We've traced him to within a few miles."
"Is there a reward?" asked poor baby. "Oh, mercenary little brute," said Father, and laughed. "Now, I was thinking of Amos Nudge," said poor baby under his breath. "What does he look like?" asked Swallow.
"Oh, big man, black hair, dark eyes."
Any special marks about him?" asked Swallow.
Nothing that comes to mind at the moment," said this porpoise. "But anyone you see now, anyone, you must report it at once."
"What did he do?" asked Swallow, sitting down suddenly.
"He killed a warder, if you want to know, with a hammer."
"I suppose that was when he was getting out," said poor baby. "A fool probably got in his way. I mean, what was he a convict for?"
"He ran over a woman. He was housebreaking. He didn't stop. He was in for manslaughter, if you know what that is," said Porcus.
"Well, we haven't seen him, that's all," I said. "No, I think if you'll excuse me, I'm going to my room to be sick a little." I marched out and the others followed me. I could hear this porker and his friend laughing. Father, I'm glad to say, was not laughing. We went to my room. It's near the bathroom, and I had to sit in the can. The others stood around me. "Well, there you are," I said. "If they catch him, they'll say he's the convict who ran over this corny dame who got in the way, not Jesus, I'd like to tell you." "I give up," said poor baby. "I'm more confused than I've ever been in my whole life. Why doesn't he admit it to the grown-ups and those two porkers?" "Hear, hear," I said, and meant it. "That's how it's all planned," said Swallow. "It'll go on being this way till the grown-ups believe in something and have this purpose. There's that Nodge. He'll be up to a bit of no good with that nanny of his," poor baby said. "When they've gone, we'll go back and tell him to take a chance and scram," said Swallow. "Is anyone beginning to doubt?" asked poor baby. "I'm just confused. I really am a mixed-up kid," said Swallow. "I'm not," I said. "If it's the last thing I ever do, I'm going to help him get away." The others nodded. "It's not as if we even knew this warder," said poor baby. "Or the dame he runned over," I said, "or the people whose house he broke into. We've got to take him as we see him and know him, and that's pretty good." "But there's still a chance anyway," said poor baby. "Oh, no one said anything about his feet. Let's have a cigarette. After that I'll give it up for Lent." He lit up and opened the lavatory window, blowing the smoke out. Suddenly he held up his hand for silence. Underneath we heard a voice. It came from the kitchen. It was Amos Nodge's nanny. We craned our necks. "Little Amos swears there was a man up there. He could hear his voice. And it was a strange voice, too, talking to all those kids. That's why they didn't have him up there. Deceitful things." "Now, don't talk about my kids like that, Gladys," said Cookie. Good old Cookie. "Amos knows what's good and bad," she went on. Oh, she could say that again. "Well," said Cookie, "if what you say is true, I'll have to tell the master, but I think I'll ask the kids first." "Waste of time. They wouldn't tell the truth. I've always said they were as wild as coots." "Quick, not a moment to lose," said Swallow. "One of us must go and warn the others. Better be me, as I'm the oldest." "But I'm the fastest," said poor baby. "Don't forget my name." "All right, you go," said Swallow. Underneath, the talking had stopped. Had she gone? Was there still time to ambush her and put a sack over her head? I asked Swallow. "Probably shriek like a stuck pig," she replied. "Go down and engage her in conversation. Compliment her on her hat or something." I went down. "Hello," I said to her and grinned. She stared at me. She hates my guts. "Where's dear little Amos?" I asked, and picked up a cat. "Playing in his nursery like a well-behaved little boy," she said tartly. "He is a dear little boy," I said. "I just love that Amos character." I could see she didn't trust me. "If you like him so well, why were you all so nasty to him then?" she asked. "We weren't," I said. "We were playing mothers and fathers with Miss D. She put on a man's voice and made like she was the father. It was the hell of a good game." "Oh, what language," she muttered. Well, it was a hell of a good game, I said. Call it what you like. He clung on to Elizabeth's pants and they fell apart, and he fell into these cowpats. It was his own fault. Fell into what? She asked, her eyes blazing. Cowpats, I said, quite simply. Really? She was shocked, she was, honestly. I expect Amos wondered who that man was up there. Pretty funny when all the time it was poor old Miss D being a father. Is that who you had up there, then? She asked, and her mouth hung open. Who else? I asked. Might have been that convict they're looking for, she said. You don't think we'd entertain a murderer unawares, do you? I asked. You don't think we'd do anything but run like ants if we thought we got a murderer in our old house, do you? She stared at me. I told you she hates my guts. Before she could say any more, Cookie came in. Hello, Cookie, I said. Hello, good old Cookie. You're just the wonderfulest cookie in the whole world. And I hugged her. Your father wants you in the sitting room, she said, you and the others. Oh, that wiped the laugh off my face. I didn't like the sound of that one. Oh, what for? I asked, easily enough. He wants a word with you, she said, and opened the fridge. I hate the smell of fridges, so I went. Father was sitting at his desk. A bad sign. Swallow was by the fire. She shrugged her shoulders and picked Betty Davis up and started messing around with her ears. Yes, Father, I started. Ah! He made like he didn't know we were there. Cookie tells me that Amos Nodgy's nurse is here with an odd tale. He looked across at us. He says he heard a strange man talking to you kids in one of the barns or somewhere tonight. Tonight? Well, that's torn it. You mean this afternoon, don't you, Father? When we were playing with Miss D, you saw us yourself. I'm talking about tonight. And, quite incidentally, Miss D was in East Grinstead all afternoon. Well, she couldn't have been, I said lamely. Now look here, you two. He looked round suddenly. Where's the boy? Oh, he'll be here in a moment. He went over to the gardener's cottage to take back Elfrey's pump. I lied myself silly. Did you or did you not see a strange man? We crossed our fingers. No, we said together. Afraid I don't believe you. He got up, crossed over to us. It beats me how you can be such fools. Here are the police telling you there's a dangerous convict about, and you won't help by telling the truth. He paused. We said nothing. Look here, you kids. Can't you trust me? He asked. We want to, I said miserably. Come on, then. Tell your dad all about it. I won't eat you. He smiled encouragingly. If we told you a secret, would you swear to keep it? I asked. That depends. Well, then, I said, rather cheekily, I suppose, we can't trust you, can we, since you asked? He looked nonplussed. We want to tell you our secret, but we won't if you don't swear to keep it, I said menacingly. Is it about this man? He asked. We didn't answer. Because maybe it's my business to tell someone else, and then where would I be if I'd sworn? Because if I promise a thing, I keep it. You know that? He looked hard at us for a long time. We looked stony. All right, he said suddenly. I promise. We were taken a bit off guard. We were suspicious. Come on, then, he said. I've given you my word. You tell, I said to Swallow. I didn't dare. There is a man about, she said softly. Not what you think, though. Not a convict. Who then? Asked Father. Jesus. What? His eyes nearly dropped out. Yes, I said. Jesus. He looked astounded. I don't understand. You mean a man told you he was Jesus? Well, yes and no, I said to him. We all know him to be that, and when you know something is true, you just believe it. And what made you believe him to be Jesus? He demanded. Oh, there's proof, all right. But beyond that, he's such a jolly nice chap. Sweet to all of us, I said.
What's the proof?
He has nail marks in his feet, said Swallow through Betty Davis's fur. Good God, he sort of whispered to himself. You see, we've known him for quite a long time, days really, but we didn't tell anyone because, well, grown-ups don't believe much in Jesus, do they? I asked him. He stared. He just stared. Why do you think that? He asked. Well, it's obvious grown-ups don't believe in anything or anyone much. I said, there sure is a right and a left. What he meant I didn't know. You'd like him. You'd like him awfully. We do, said Swallow. And nothing and no one but himself will convince us he's anything or anyone else. I see, he said, but he clearly didn't. No one spoke. And then poor Baby came in. He looked pretty hot and sweaty for a chap who just delivered a pump. Do you believe this Jesus talk? Dad asked. Poor Baby looked surprised. Oh, yes, most certainly, he said. Do you? I don't know what to believe, said Father. I've been hitting the solar plexus. Oh, bye? Asked poor Baby anxiously. Dad didn't answer him. Where is this man? He asked me. Can't tell you now, I said. He might be anywhere. Had Dad joined the society? Asked poor Baby. In a way, we said. Anyway, he's sworn to secrecy. Oh, that's all right then, said poor Baby, and wiped his face with the tail of his shirt. Dad sat with his head in his hand. Then he went over to the table and helped himself to the bottle. He'll be okay now, I thought to myself. The phone went and he picked it up. There's a police car at the bottom of the drive, poor Baby whispered. They're at Edward's house, Cricky told me. Hello, said Dad on the phone. We listened. Oh, really? Said Dad on the phone. Did he? What else? I see. I see. I see. God knows what he saw. We didn't like the sound of it. He hung up and faced us. We waited. Your friend Nodge told his father he heard you talking to a man in the Oast, asking him if he were a convict or not. Our friend? I like that. Well? He waited. We were talking to this man we told you about. Jesus, said Swallow. She was nearly in tears. What's happening? I asked. Well, naturally the police must explore every avenue. It's their job. If it's not the man they're looking for, we're all right. We? asked Swallow. Yes, all of us. It would be wonderful. Just what the world wants. You seem miserable as hell about it. When are they coming? I asked, feeling sick again. In a few minutes. He stood with his back to us at the window. Supposing you've made a mistake, you won't take it badly, will you? You won't stop believing and all that. Well, we didn't know what to say. I wish you had a mother, he said quietly. I'm not much good as a mother. It's mothers who tell you the right things about God and Jesus. You must forgive me if you feel I've failed you in any way. I mean that. We didn't answer because, quite frankly, the conversation had got beyond us. And anyway, we were a bit worried about our friend in the Oast. Are the others all ready? I whispered to poor Baby. More than ready, he said. That police car speeded us up. There are kids tearing round the place at this moment. Telephones going and everything. Hell, I thought selfishly. Another bad night. Do you miss not having a mother? Dad asked suddenly. He still had his back to us. What? I asked. Good Lord, no. We don't need anyone except ourselves. And you, of course, I said, trying to be polite. Father let out a great sigh. I think I'll go and find Granny, he said. We knew there wasn't any point asking him not to tell her, and the world would be full of police in a moment. He paused at the door. Oddly enough, only today I was wondering if you wouldn't all have to go to boarding school, he said brightly.
What the hell would that prove? I asked rudely. Any other time he'd have been livid, but this time he just opened the door and went out. Now this was our chance. In a flash we were out of the room and down towards the Oast. Actually, we were going in to warn him. Something stopped us, and it wasn't a police car either. It was children. Hundreds of them. Never seen so many. Didn't know half of them even. Shirley and the usual crowd were in the front, and Tracy and Max. What's going on? We whispered. Cricky heard the inspector tell Edward what old Amos had said. He was also there when the inspector phoned your father. We didn't miss a moment, said Jeremy. Mark flew off on his bike and used Elizabeth's phone because they're all out. They've come from everywhere, as far as Tunbridge Wells, he said excitedly. On the other side, the old Oast stood out against the sky with a few corny stars in it. Is he still there? I asked. Elizabeth says he is, said Pippa. He doesn't give a hoot. It's part of the plan for him to be taken again and again, said Swallow wearily. Well, this time he's got us, I said. Get everyone into the hedges and hide behind the barn, Swallow whispered. We mustn't let anyone know what's going on. We must have waited in the cold behind this old Italian creeper for hours. I was cold as hell and just terrified I'd get hiccups. We heard Father and Cookie and Granny calling, and the lot of them were just advancing with sticks and lanterns when this police car came up and stopped. Well, we know where he is, said old Porkers. The boy Nodge told us. I wonder if he got some pieces of silver, Dad said. Quite right. He was thinking of that character Judas. There were 5 of these Porker-type policemen, but they didn't have guns like they do on television. They advanced slowly in line towards the Oast, and just about as they arrived beside the cow-house, there was a shrill whistle from poor Baby. They stopped and stared. Personally, I think they were scared stiff. Then Porker stepped forward and shouted, Come on out, Blake! We know you're in there! Blake? How silly can you get? There was nothing but silence. No answer. He shouted again. Then he switched on the most gigantic torch I've ever seen. He stopped. Right there in the beam of his torchlight were what seemed to be hundreds of children. They filled up the whole yard between him and the Oast, and everyone wore these badges. He was shocked, quite shocked, but held. He pulled himself together. Come on, kids, he shouted. Out of the way, we mean business. No one moved. They were solid, and by now we were in the crowd too, with this light shining in our eyes. Come on, get weaving, he shouted. No one moved. It's no use standing there gaping. We're after a convict. Clear out or we'll use force. We were hypnotised. Go on, Bert, he yelled. Push him out the way. What the hell do they think they're doing anyway? This Bert started to try and push, but he pushed the wrong boy. It was Brian. He's a giant, about 6'5". I don't suppose he knew what the hell was going on, but he didn't like being pushed, and he knocked the fellow down. Easy, easy now, yelled Porkers. You don't want to follow the man up there, do you? We do, we shouted. Lovely. It was getting fun now and liable to be rough. Try as they might, they couldn't shift us, and I was glad to see Father wasn't on their side, nor did he give us any orders. It was then that the most extraordinary thing happened. The barn and the Oast broke out in flames. Get the fire brigade, shouted Porkers. It's probably a faulty connection somewhere, but it might be Blake up to his old tricks. Everyone seemed to be tearing round in circles. Another police car had driven up, and our other grand sort of policeman, who looked more like St. John's ambulance, strode across the yard as if everything belonged to him. Porkers was carrying on like mad, and talking and waving his hands about at this St. John's ambulance-type man. In the distance, we could see old Granny. Her hair was sticking out all round her head where the wind had caught it. She was waving madly at nothing. Father was just standing there with Violet and old Cocky. They seemed in another world, they did really. By now the Oast was pretty well burning hard. Great flames were shooting out of one side of it, and we could see figures all over the place, black like cutouts we have in a book in the nursery. Thank God there ain't no calves in there, I heard someone say. Porker's had himself a megaphone now. "Are you children going to get out of our way?" he bellowed.
"No!" came the great shout. "No, no, no!"
"Damn it," I heard him say. "Where are all their mothers and fathers? Get some fool to find out and clear them away." By now it seemed to me there were even more. Total strangers, all wearing the badge, so I couldn't complain. "Where are you from?" I asked a black-headed boy standing by me. "From Dorking," he shouted back. "I got off the bus with the others at the crossroads when I heard the news." "Dorking? That's the end of the world." "How did you know?" I shouted at him. "Who told you?" "I don't know," he said. "One tells another, another tells another, and all of a sudden thousands know. Well, that's how it was on the bus." Swallow had got sort of cut off. I could see her, but I couldn't get at her. Poor baby was still beside me and hung on to his hunk of hair. I suddenly didn't want anything to happen to him with all this fire and everything. "What you got in your shirt?" I shouted. "Betty Davis," he shouted back. It was like Guy Fawkes night, it was really, only better. Cricky was pretty near me too, and I yelled at him. "Do you think it's all right up there?" "Sure, quite sure." "It's a miracle," he said. And it was the first time I really thought he believed. In a second his word went round. "Miracle, miracle, miracle." I could hear it everywhere, and all their faces were shining in the light of the fire. Suddenly 2 huge fire engines arrived. You never saw anything so exciting in your life. "Never mind the fire. Hose those children out the way," this Porker's creature was shouting. That's when Father moved. In a second he was on this fire engine. He knew old Harold, and old Harold respected him. "Direct the hose straight at the host, Harold," he said. "Straight at it." "Blimey," Harold was saying. "What an audience. Never seen so many kids in my whole life. Where they come from?" "All over the world, Harold," poor baby shouted. "All over the world." There was total confusion by now. Men hosing the host like mad, their gigantic helmets shining in the light of enormous lamps, policemen running round in circles, and always this vast crowd of more and more children. I could see Swallow was amazed. She kept making faces at me over other people's heads. The whole thing had gone beyond us. It really had. The hose was pouring water onto the host. One side of it was quite burnt away, but it didn't seem to be coming any nearer to us. I wondered afterwards if anyone would have moved. They were solid down that end, and not a squawk out of anyone. There were other people arriving now, people with huge cameras like newsreels. Excited as hell they were, pushing and shoving and clambering up on the old Italian creeper and taking pictures of all these children. Everyone was swaying about. There wasn't all that room. I fought my way to the swing and found about 12 people on it. Half the rhododendron bush was broken, and there were people just everywhere. I was suddenly sick of it. I was really. As suddenly as the fire started, it stopped. I suppose it was these hoses. Quick as lightning, Porkers and the other policemen were across the yard and into the host. There was nothing more we could do about it. Nothing. We waited in silence, hundreds of us, the light shining on our badges, nobody moving. "At least we held them up," Jeremy said. I saw Father walk slowly across the yard. He looked very old all of a sudden. I don't know why. Maybe it was the light. He disappeared into the host. Still, none of us moved. After a few moments, Father appeared at the door of the host. He stood quite still for a moment, and then he said not too loudly, "Will my 3 children please come here?" Well, there was no problem to get there. People just fell back and let us pass. We held each other's hands as we went. We were terrified suddenly that we were going to find him all dead and burnt. We walked steadily across the yard. Personally, I felt as if we were going to be shot. "Yes, Father," we whispered nervously. "Come with me," he said, and started up the ladder. We climbed up slowly, one after the other, found ourselves in the top of the host. One side of it was burnt down, and we could see the sky quite easily and all these stars. Old Porkers had his bright torch and was messing about in the straw and poking bits of half-burnt apples. There was no one else. Not a sign of anyone, either burnt or alive. Not a sign that anyone had been there. Old Porkers rattled down the ladder, shouting out something we couldn't hear. "What are we doing here, Father?" asked Swallow. "Wanted you to see this," he said, and pointed to the bit of wall that was still standing. He held up his torch for us to see, and we looked. On the white wall was a little black cross, like you see in churches. It looked as if someone had drawn it with his thumb, thick with dust from the floor. There wasn't a sign of anything else. "I thought you'd like to see that," said Father. "Then you can tell the others if you want to." Then he went down the ladder. "That was his goodbye sign," said Swallow sadly. Like the vicar makes at us at the end of church on Sundays." "Who's going to tell all those others?" asked poor Baby. "I don't want to," I told him. "I'd be scared stiff and I don't know what to say anyway." "Well, they should know," he added. "Some of them have come absolute miles, all the way from Dorking." "Look," said Swallow. "There's that flower Johnny brought up, all beastly and wet." "What can we say to them out there?" poor Baby persisted. "Just say it's the end of the story," I replied. "Well, supposing it isn't?" he asked. "And anyway, who is going to tell them?" "Go on, Brat," said Swallow. "You're a writer, aren't you?" "Writing and speaking is two different things," I told her a trifle loftily. I was beginning to sweat at the idea, I was really. "Come on," poor Baby said. "Let's get it over and make it short and sweet. I'm dead beat, I am really." We went down the ladder. Father was waiting outside with some of the farm men and old Edward. They looked anxious, I thought, wondering what we were going to say and who was going to say it. "Come on, you," said Edward. "You're the most talkative." Before I knew it, I was up on his shoulder. I could see everyone. It was ghastly. Thousands of eyes glaring at me in this oddish light, like wild animals in the dark. There wasn't a sound anywhere. Edward sort of nudged my behind. I was racking my brains for something to say. "One side of the joint up there is burnt away," I began. "You can see the sky and the stars. He's not there anymore, of course. Well, we didn't expect him to be." Still, there wasn't a sound anywhere. I had to go on. "The side what is not burnt away has a sign on it. Like people make on trees to show they went this way, so you know which way to follow. A cross." Still not a single soul said a word or made a movement. "We could stick this sign on our badges if there's any room," I drawled on. Weren't the fools ever going to move? "Well, like those French underground men stuck all over the place, to show they were free." They all started nodding their heads, which was something active at least. "So, well, he's free, isn't he? There isn't anything more to say, and you can all go home to Dorking and places." I'd had enough, I had really. I struggled down, and then suddenly everyone started cheering. Extraordinary, really. They all moved off after that, and pretty soon there wasn't anyone left except a few old cronies like Jeremy and Co. and Tracy and Max. "Hey," said Max, "what about Amos? If we see him, should we give him a bit of a caning?" "Golly, no," I answered. "Just be dignified and turn the other cheek sort of thing." "Come on," said Father. "Bed." I'm here to tell you I was pretty pleased with the idea. My back was hurting like mad. Edward carried me all the way upstairs and plonked me on my bed. "Edward," said poor Baby, "do you suppose he was just going to play noughts and crosses with himself?" "No," said Edward emphatically. "I do not. And don't you ever think anything else but what Brat said." "What did she say?" he asked. "I'm so tired I've forgotten already." "She said it was like a sign on a tree, to show which way to go if you wanted to follow." "What if you're too tired to go any further?" said poor Baby. "Well, then you just sits down and waits," said Edward. The grown-ups came in to say good-night, all of them. "Look here," said Father. I don't want you to be upset about your chum out there." "Good Lord, no," said Swallow. "She was putting a nightie on back to front, on purpose, I knew that. It's torn in front and a bit low for someone of her age, you know." "Now, how do you feel about it all?" Father went on. "Smashing," said poor baby. "About him, I mean," went on Father. "Oh," said Swallow, "he just got away, that's all. Don't let's go on about it." "You see, Dad," I explained as kindly as I could, "it just wasn't the right time. You could see by all that din and fuss the police were making that there wasn't a hope of him getting any grown-ups to believe. So he just went." "What about all those kids?" asked Violet. "Well, I'll never forget all those kids' faces as long as I live out there in that firelight." "The kids are all right," I told her. "They all believed. One day when we're all grown-ups, he's coming back again. Then we'll be ready." "Peter Pan all over again," said old Cocky under his breath. I didn't know what he was talking about, so I asked for some Horlicks. That's what I wanted more than anything, even Alka-Seltzer. I could have died for Horlicks. "Good old brat," said poor baby. "I knew there was something I was longing for and I didn't know what it was. It's Horlicks, that's what it is." "I'll send it up," said Father as he kissed us good night, and they all went out. We could hear them talking as they went down the stairs. "Amazing," said Granny. "They've dismissed it from their minds already." "What do you make of it, Slim?" asked Violet. "There are more things in heaven and earth, dear Violet, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. Grown-ups do make the most extraordinary remarks." "Here," I called to the others who were in the bathroom. They came out. "What is it?" asked Swallow. "I'm going to make the same mark that he did, and not on my badge neither. Right here over my perishing bed." "Good-o," said poor baby. "So will I." And we all did. I got up my diary after that to put a circle round the day so I wouldn't forget. Then I noticed something. "Hey," I said, "what does it say about today in your two diaries?" They got them out. "Mine says fox hunting begins," said Swallow. "Mine says order your way for now," said poor baby. "Why? What does yours say?" "All Hallows Eve," I told him. "That's what it says, All Hallows Eve." "So what?" asked poor baby. "Odd things happen on All Hallows Eve," I told them. "You can say that again," said poor baby, "because odd things have." Father brought out the Horlicks and sat on the bed while we drank it. "What exactly does All Hallows Eve mean, Father?" I asked him. "It means Hallow Mass," he said very quietly. "It's the evening before All Saints' Day." "Sort of queer, isn't it?" I said. "And incidentally, as we're alone now, did you believe?" "I believe that I did," he said. Then he went. We lay still in our beds, and there wasn't any more after that. It was warm in my bed, and I thought of Jesus and where he was. The barn and the host would be emptier now than they were before he came. Outside in the sky and in the room there was no colour, just grey like shadows, and over the farmhouse this night swam like a great moonlit sea. The dark was all around us. There wasn't a sound anywhere, not even the washing up noises. Darkness all around us. But we weren't alone. That's all.